Aloha, everyone. Welcome back to the negotiation table. My name is Wincy Hong, your host and communication specialist here at HGEA. And with us today, we have a familiar face, friend of the podcast, our very own executive director, Randy Pereira. Welcome back, Randy.
Well, thank you, and kungi fa joy to everybody.
Oh, well, thank you for joining us. Before we dive into this month's interview, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button so you never miss an episode. All right, let's dive in. The 2026 legislative session is underway, with lawmakers grappling with the impact of the so-called Big Beautiful Bill, passed by extremists in Congress and the White House. The bill slashed billions from the states for supplemental food benefits and health care for the most vulnerable, all to pay for tax cuts for billionaires. Lawmakers are in the uncomfortable position of figuring out how to balance the state's budget while preserving vital services to the public. And that's just one issue among many directly related to labor. So my first question for you, Randy, maybe we can start with the budget question. The governor is already talking about pausing recently passed tax breaks in order to weather the shortfall. And HGA is calling on lawmakers to preserve vital services to the public in an ad we have launched recently. Can you talk about where this issue stands right now?
Well, as you suggest, Wincy, the budget is likely to dominate a lot of the conversation at the legislature this year. Our state law requires that the state have a balanced 6-year financial plan, and legislators are bound to act on the projections of revenue from the State Council on Revenues. Right now, in this current fiscal year, tax revenues are a little bit ahead of collection, from what I understand. So our situation in the immediate sense is not altogether bad. However, it's very clear that we have only seen the beginning of cuts coming from the federal government in the aforementioned areas, whether it be healthcare, in food benefits, and other social services. And it's not a concern, it's a reality. I think that's the way to put it, that we are anticipating more cuts. So as you look into the so-called out years of the budget, very clearly we could be running some significant deficits. And that's where we are, and that's what legislators are going to have to grapple with. So the governor has suggested that the tax cuts that are going to be implemented as of January 1st are going to be moving forward. However, he's looking to pause perhaps the cuts that were going to be scheduled for 27, 28. And at this point, that's almost a necessary evil to consider, because we just don't know the magnitude of the cuts coming from the federal government. And then the legislature is going to face some very difficult choices in order to make sure that we continue to provide a safety net for our communities, and that there are adequate state resources to make up some of the federal shortfall at least. So certainly, we anticipate that the budget conversation will dominate. We will continue to advocate that basic services need to be provided, but we're also looking at a variety of things, perhaps alternative revenue sources, what have you, different ways to try to find a patchwork way, at least in the short term, to deal with what we expect coming from the Trump administration.
I see. A high-profile assault on an assistant athletic director from Moanalua High School has brought the safety of government employees back into the conversation. My understanding is the employee had to hire her own attorney, with the state's attorney general saying they won't represent employees in court. Should the state be doing more for its employees facing similar situations?
Absolutely. This is one issue that I personally have been rather passionate about. And frankly, it's to be very blunt about it, this has pissed me off for years. The employer, in particular the Attorney General, has chosen to hide behind a lack of policy that would allow them to represent employees who, while acting on behalf of the state and doing their jobs, may have faced threats and or harassment. They have suggested at times that there is a constitutional prohibition, which is baloney. The reality is that the state just doesn't want to represent its employees in these kinds of matters. And it's forced other employees that we have represented over time to seek their own counsel, pay for their own attorneys, to seek restraining orders, etc. And they've been basically left on their own and have to fend for themselves without the support of the state. And in many instances, the state has actually fought back when we have attempted to secure greater protections, even in one case where the employee was being stalked by somebody who could identify where she was with her children at different times of the day. Things have come to the fore at the legislature because of this atrocious assault at Mauna Lua. And now perhaps the general public is taking notice and realizing that employees are at significant risk. And it is high time for the employer, the state, to step up to protect its employees more. And we certainly will continue to advocate for that.
Now, let's talk about high job vacancy rates. HCA has spent the last several years now banging the drum about high vacancy rates across government, which puts a huge strain on the existing workforce. Here at HCA, we are concerned that there are some bills out there that would eliminate these vacant positions under the guise of cost savings. Can you talk about why this is a terrible idea and the need to defeat it?
Well, most certainly. I think the difficult thing that we all have to accept is that in a lot of instances, some positions have been vacant for an extraordinary amount of time. And it seems that the public focus has been, by some legislators, on positions that have been vacant for at least 5 years. One, the state's recruitment process is broken. They have proven incapable of modernizing their recruitment processes and trying to ensure that they have a greater opportunity to attract and retain qualified people. Another issue that's at play here is that the way the state budgets, there is no budget to account for individuals who retire or leave service and for the payment of their accumulated vacation. So oftentimes, the line departments are forced to keep these positions, some positions vacant, in order to pay, because the legislature does not give them money to pay for this accumulated vacation leave, which is an obligation that the state must satisfy. In total, for us, though, the big question is whether or not the state should be using some of these funds for a better purpose. And that's one of the things we've been advocating for. We have advocated that for some of these vacancies, if you're going to go ahead and abolish them, we should use the money to pay the incumbents more. And that's basically the focus of some of our proposals to reprice positions. We feel that money that would otherwise have been appropriated for these vacant positions should be redirected and boost the pay of the incumbent employees who are called upon to do the work of 2 or 3 positions as it is. And we use that as a recruitment and retention tool. And at least at minimum, try to keep the folks on the job, in the job with a better standard of living and a better wage.
Related to vacancies, there are also a few bills that seem to expand the use of exempt positions across government and even give departments more latitude in hiring contractors rather than civil servants. This feels like an admission that the State Department of Human Resources Development is failing at recruitment and a way to get around civil service protections. What do you think about all this?
I can validate that by saying that we ask a lot of these departments that are proposing an increase in the use of exempt positions, and they flat out tell us that it takes way too long for DHERD to give them lists of eligible applicants. So clearly, the process is failing. It is far too cumbersome and too slow for the modern world. In addition to that, we object because, one, exempt employment opens the door to patronage, where you're not bringing somebody into the regular civil service process, and therefore perhaps the individuals could come in either without the right qualifications or people can hire friends, etc., which isn't appropriate. And two, we also object because exempt employees are generally a lot closer to at will They are not provided the same level of protection and just cause due process that civil servants are. So we do have legislation pending that would give and extend to these exempt employees a greater degree of protection and due process. But that's something that we're continuing to fight for. And finally, with exempt employment, sometimes it seems the sky is the ceiling in terms of what some of these individuals are paid. And again, when you combine that with the patronage idea, it's not inconceivable that a lot of these positions will be filled by individuals who are somehow associated with management and then get salaries that are way out of kilter compared to others on the job who are in the civil service. So for all of these reasons, we object, and we will continue to fight against the expansion of exempt. And we're trying to get legislators to understand that the real problem is the recruitment process itself and the unwillingness, apparently, of the employers to kind of pay a wage that is fairer and more in line with the market in today's world.
Absolutely. Now, Randy, we know you are a busy man, so we really appreciate you making time to join us here on the negotiation table. Do you have any last thoughts?
Once again, we're fully engaged in the legislative process, and we are monitoring hundreds of bills. And I would certainly encourage our members and our listeners to pay close attention to our website for regular updates. There are a lot of different things that are going to be put before the legislature. We've talked about the budget for sure, but there are going to be a number of bills now, as you suggested, in the wake of the assault at Wanalua. So the issue of employee safety is going to be one. We're also pursuing a number of things regarding the pricing process to make sure that we can streamline our ability to try to seek repricing of individual positions or groups of positions. We're pushing for a change by the legislature in how employees who have to front their own personal money for travel are reimbursed. That's one of the most unfair things that I've ever dealt with. Travel reimbursements can take 6 to 8 months for some people, or if not longer. Meanwhile, our employees are paying on their own credit card at the very high credit rates that they're facing today. And of course, the state's not reimbursing them for whatever interest charges that they accumulate. So we're trying to make sure that the payments would be made in a more timely basis, and penalties to the employer if they don't pay on time. We're also looking to force the state to expand up to the IRS limits what they allow an individual to deduct pre-tax for the payment of medical premiums. The counties have all allowed the maximum federal deduction pre-tax. The state has dragged its sokole about this, unfair. Our members are, as a result, are paying more tax than they really should. They should get a bigger break. And it's inexcusable, frankly, for DHERT not to act upon this. So those are different things that we're continuing to pursue. There are issues that we're pursuing with the Department of Education. It seems that the Senate in particular thinks that they're now experts on how organizations should be structured and trying to eliminate complex area superintendent positions, which is just foolish. And we're also looking at trying to ensure that schools are treated fairly when it comes to the potential redevelopment. We know that there are a number of schools that are either prime places for some kind of commercial development, or thanks to laws passed previously to add a housing component. But those kinds of decisions need to be made in conjunction with the principals and the staff of those schools, and not just done at the whim of some developer. So things like that are on the table, and it's going to be a busy session as usual. And I ask everybody, stay tuned for regular updates.
Absolutely. Well, mahalo, Randy. We are also looking forward to seeing how this session shapes up. So thank you.
Thanks.
Join the conversation in the comments, everyone. Let us know, what bills are you watching in the state legislature? Are you concerned about the impact of the loss of federal funding? Do you want to see lawmakers address employee safety? For more content like this, don't forget to like and subscribe. Until next time.